pocket saying I had this boss who was tormenting me and saying कि तुमको sales आता ही नहीं है. And I was like, I've been half a day into this job. What will I know about sales? When you master your execution, it holds you in good stead because nobody can pull wool over your eyes.
3 tricks which you understood at that point in time. For many people, it might be very, very helpful.
So, we read all these celebrity stories. People who say, hey, I wake up in the morning and I'm only breathing my brand and I don't sleep all night. Nothing of the sort. When I'm working, I'm working. When I switch off, I switch off.
We largely hear about the entrepreneur's success stories. We hardly hear about the challenges that he goes through.
But we are not your typical Karan Johar family of 30, 40 people. We have downsized. We're making dinner sets for 1 person. We are making tea sets for 2.
So, Kewal, thanks a lot for joining us today. It's great to have you on board on our Genius and Genuine podcast, which we do. It's always, like I was mentioning to you earlier, that what we try to do is that there are so many people who have such interesting journeys in their life. And it's so much to learn from that. And like we always talk about that many people really talk to celebrities and etc. But it is, a whole lot of us who may not have a name, but as far as work that they have done is so interesting that we would love to hear about that work. There are so many people out there who would love to hear that story. That it does not necessarily always have to be that what celebrities did or you had to achieve something so superlative for it to be meaningful. Even small things that one does can be so meaningful in a life. So we'd love to hear about your journey, where you started off from, as a child, if you had certain aspirations. Where are you as far as those aspirations are concerned? Are you still on it or you left them long time back and there are new aspirations which you have created? And of course, we would love to hear about your venture, which you have right now. And it's some very, very interesting work that you are doing there. We'd love to hear about that. Sure. So on to you. Please tell us a little bit about your journey right from the start.
Sure. So first of all, thank you for having me. And like I told you, I'm already following some bit of your podcast and a big fan of what you do. So thank you for having me here. I'll try to be as genuine as possible. Genius, I don't know.
Of course you are.
So that's for the people who work with me to talk about, and yeah, I guess it's something that you don't think about. Yes. But yeah, thanks. It's great being here, and after we spoke, I was looking forward to this. So yeah, I mean, just to go back in time, and one doesn't think about this often, but yeah. Childhood, I must be honest, right? I think you may get a lot of guests who may have these razor-focused objectives of what they want to be. No such thing with me, right? So, in fact, most of my childhood went into the meandering thoughts of being a pilot one day and a lawyer one day and a doctor one day. And the same thing that with me. And to that extent, I think right down to undergrad days, there were these lovely thoughts that came in mind of ye karenge and all the stuff that we want to. There was no real focus, and I must admit to that, right? And I came from a single parent background, and my mom, apart from the regular that you should support yourself and get out there and make yourself useful, she didn't really push me into doing anything. So in fact, there's a very funny story. I just finished about to finish my graduation, and like all nice boys, I was seeing this young lady, and her father decided to call me home one day, and he said, what do you do? Kya karte ho? And no fault of his, most fathers do. And I was thinking, what does he expect like a person who's not even graduated to do? Because tab yahi scene tha. So, and he went on to, be polite, but at some point in the conversation, I realized that he felt that I was good for nothing, right? And it was still those days where you were a dreamer. And I think I laugh about it now, but that was actually a little bit of a turning point for me, right? I came out of the house and I got down. At that time, midday was this big newspaper. Yes. So I stood in the corner at the local shop and I picked up a paper, and there was this ad which said, walk-in interview with a multinational bank. So I said, chalo. And from there itself, I took the train and went down to Mahalakshmi, I think it was. And there was this walk-in interview for a DSA was running a walk-in interview for a multinational bank which sold credit cards.
Okay.
So it was a series of incidences, so nothing planned. Pleasant ones, of course. And so I gave the interview, and the person, I don't know whether he liked me or not, but he definitely hired me, right? And straight out of Rocket Singh, I had this boss who was tormenting me and saying ki tumko sales aata hi nahi hai. And I was like, again, I've been half a day into this job. What will I know about sales, right? And in fact, that's when I started, really thinking about what do you want to do, what career you want to take. That was in fact my first job, right? And I happened to stumble upon it because of some incident. So nothing planned. It all happened the way it happened. The stuff that I learned, I was not there for very long, and it was an international bank, I think it was Standard Chartered, and it was selling credit cards. Or us zamane mein, this was, the late 90s. Credit card was an alien concept still. There was, one Citibank and that was it, right, correct. With credit card. So the task was very difficult. I had to go to tell somebody that, hey, you have to pay me to get this card, and once you get this card, you will spend more money. So nobody understood that concept. So it was very, very tough initiation into the whole concept of sales, right? And lots of the things, and I must unabashedly admit that a lot of my sales technique I use even today is what I've learned during those 6-7 months that I was working with them, right? Tough job, you're walking, cold calling into offices, you need to build techniques of how you get in, you have to build your USPs, you have to present it to an audience. When you're selling it to a share broker, a different way of doing it, and also these are some of the learnings which are practical learnings, right? And no amount of schooling, colleging, Ivy League school will teach you all of this, right? And so it was interesting. The early part, I spent doing a bit of sales, learned a lot from this tough boss of mine. Eventually, by some stroke of luck, I was outselling what he was doing. That made him even more upset. But yeah, in a way, it was interesting. So that was, I wouldn't say the perfect, but at least the start to my career, right? Post that, I think, if I were to just move ahead on that track, right? During one of those cold calling, walking visits, I happened to enter this very famous building called Express Towers in Nariman Point, right? It's a landmark. Yes. And that building had this advertising agency called Lintas. The great Alec used to run that place. And, after going into many small offices and cold calling, and I entered this fancy office, and then there was this other visionary change that happened, and I said, no. Now I think, we should be working in a place like this. This is more the culture I like and all that stuff. And as was my want during that time, I went back to office and said, thank you very much. Wo jo elastic tie that they gave you, I removed it and gave it back to them, right? And I said I would want to work for an ad agency, right? Now I went back there and, made some connects and all that. And they said, hey, we are a multinational ad agency, so we won't be hiring anybody unless you've done an MBA. And that's how I decided. So again, just to pull back in the story, right? It's not as if I, from school and college days decided that I'm going to do my master's and MBA, falana thikana. All of these were incidences that happened and made you go forward, right? Correct. Perhaps it's very different than most people, right? Who are planned, how they do it and all that. But I must, again, I keep repeating that I must admit that all of this was just a series of incidences. And then, of course, the rest of it was, pretty much the way I wanted it to go. In fact, those were my early days, and that's how I realized that you need to focus on something. And once you focus on that particular aspect, you need to learn. Correct. Right? And once you learn, then you move to the next big thing and you expand your horizon. In fact, this focus, learn, and expand is a logic that I use even today, right? Oh, even in our new venture, we the people who work with us, a small team that we have, we tell them that, hey, you know what? Why don't you focus on some task, learn how to do it very, very well, and when you become great at it, then you expand into the next big thing that you want to do. So I think that has been, if I can call it that, the guiding principle of how I've managed my entire career, right? That's how advertising, I went back to manage, I got through my first attempt in management school. Like I was telling you before we started this podcast, there were several opportunities that came my way, even at management school at campus level. But by then I was so focused that I want to be in advertising that I refused offers from fairly large brands and companies, which most people would consider silly, right, at that point of time. But I was very focused in, and I finally did get into a job in a very small agency, right? Now, again, after you do your master's from a reputed institute and most of your colleagues are at blue chip companies and you go to this small agency, most people thought it was a fail, but for me, it was a big win, right? For two reasons, right? One is I was in the field that I wanted to pursue, right? And I hadn't made any compromise on that front. Secondly, which in hindsight was a great decision, because when you go to a small place, right, everything has to be done by you.
Correct.
Right. And in advertising, those days was multi-department and several level, not unlike what it is now. I'm not so sure about how it is now, but at that point of time, you had somebody to pick a paper from one table to the other and several departments. But when you go to a smaller place, you learn everything.
Correct.
The next big thing for me was execution, right? Execution is everything. Ideas, we're a country of 1 billion ideas, right? But unless you don't execute that well, it's of no sense. Correct. So I guess those first few years went on in absolutely fine-tuning execution, right? Ground level execution, because at a smaller place you were made to do everything. You were the media guy, you were the artwork guy, you at times wrote lines for your, you met your clients, of course, you got briefs from them. So you kind of did everything. You got into production and everything, right? So while you didn't master all of it, you learned all of it, right? In a way, when you master your execution, it holds you in good stead, because nobody can pull wool over your eyes as you go forward. And I figured that, right? When we work with partners, you're able to tell them, "Nee, this is not right. This is how you do it." Right? So the first few years, broadly speaking, was all about learning your basics right and getting your execution right. And then, I spent, I think, the first 9 years of my life with advertising. And then, of course, I moved on to larger agencies. I did go to Lintas finally. And I did tick that box, right? I worked with them for 5 to 6 years. The good part of, while there are benefits of working with a smaller agency, when you work with a larger agency, you're exposed to larger clients, right? And Unilever was Lintas's biggest client, and the kind of customer rigor that they put you through, they expect their partners also to follow the same processes that they do. Their advanced brand communication workshops, etc., were excellent. So for me, I think the first 10 years, I think youngsters nowadays, after 5 years, they consider themselves senior management, right? But for me, first 10 years, I was very clear that this is foundation building, this is learning execution, this is absorbing, this is about meeting customers, consumers, as Unilever would call them, all around the country, because India is several countries put together, right? You're changing every few kilometers. So lots of learning in the first 10 years. And that's how it all started.
Oh, that's very interesting. So in your you told me that you were possibly not focused as a child and etc. Like razor focus, some of the kids have, and etc. But I would tell you that that's largely the rule, that not many people are fully aware of what they really want to do. And discovery along the way Actually, many times people discount that.
Right.
In the sense that they feel that you do not have the focus, you do not understand where you want to be, what you want to do, and etc. And that's a little bit of a drawback, right? But discovery along the way is actually not just about discovery of what you want to do or what you should be doing, but it is actually what you want to do, because you are discovering yourself as well.
Correct.
Right? And when you're discovering yourself, you are actually discovering what are your passions, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and etc. And that's when you are able to, make better decisions.
Correct.
So rather than getting stuck in a job or in a profile or in an education, which you ultimately realize that this is not what I wanted to do, but something else, because the realization happened late. It's always nice to discover along the way.
Absolutely.
And I think you are far better placed. You did brilliantly, far better than many others, because you went with your passion right from day one. That despite the fact that there were many blue chip companies who were ready or wanting to take you on board, you just were very focused on going for advertising, because that's where you saw that your passion was, and you really wanted to do something. And ultimately you did reach the advertising agency that you wanted to, right?
True.
So somewhere you found your way, right, to really achieve what you. So I think that's a brilliant story, and which is what I say, that that's exactly the kind of story that we want to convey to masses in general. That anything that if they have the focus, if they know exactly what they want to do early as possible, it's great. But if they are doing the discovery along the way, it's great. So it's just let it be. Go with the flow of what really is. And as long as you understand that bit, that is the core important bit, and etc. Coming to the kind of organizations that you went through, I'm sure, like you did mention that at this credit card sales company, there were a few selling tricks that you understood, right? I think it'll be nice for you to just tell us those 3 tricks which you understood at that point in time. For many people, it might be very, very helpful.
When I was selling credit cards, I think that was my first learning in consumer behavior, right? I mean, that's a fancy word for it, but that time, it was very important to talk to the person in the way they wanted to be talked to, understand what they're looking for, what are their motivations to buy into your product, right? Tap into that and then present your product as a solution, right? Correct. So, for example, and these are top of mind examples. This is like 8 years back, right? But when you walked into a share broker's office, right, and you offered a credit card to him, one made analogies to him of how you can leverage his card for credit and make use of it and then make more money out of it, etc., etc. And suddenly they were all yours, right? When you walked, for example, into an FMCG or an advertising office and you wanted to pitch it to the executive there, you talked to him of how he could flash his card at a dinner and presented it was an ego burst for that person. And the fact that he has a card itself is a status symbol, etc. And suddenly they were all yours, right? So these are very rudimentary, right? But they're those base level nuggets of how you should sell, right? And I think in many ways it's not changed, right? Even today, if you look at the digital space, right? And we do a lot of work in analytics, right? And it's only because you want to understand your customer a bit better. Those days, of course, you don't have the tools. You had to use your human skills to do this. But I think these little nuggets that you use work very well at a micro level and also macro level when you're doing a strategy, right? When I was with Deutsche Bank, and if any of my colleagues of that time are hearing this, they'll know what I'm talking about, right? You were the last multinational bank to come into India. We launched Deutsche Bank Retail in India, right? Right. Your debit and credit cards have come into the market when all the other multinational banks, forget the private banks like HDFC and ICICI, they're already big, and they were the public sector banks. so you were last of the lot, right? So why on earth will anybody want to open an account with you? It's a no-brainer, right? You have all of 2 branches in Bombay City, for example, or maybe 2 in Delhi, and so very difficult, right? So there again, you have to find the insight, right? At that point of time, the usage of credit card was already there, but debit cards had come in a big way, right? And we the ability to go to, not stand in line with a teller and remove cash, but just go to a machine and remove your HSBC had done a damn good job of coining the term ATM through their ad campaign, and that became generic to all of it. The ability for the customer to do that was great. Right now, we have all of 2 banks and 4 ATMs, right? It's a big disadvantage. And I think that time we said, hey, let's turn this disadvantage into an advantage, right? So we went back to Visa, who was a card issuer, and said that, you know what, we'll shut down the 10 ATMs that we own, right? And whatever money we save now, we will give it to Visa as a transaction fee, and allow them to us to use their card at all Visa ATMs, which is all bank ATMs. Now, of course, all of the banks know it, but we were one of the first to do it, right? Now, we were a small bank, so, it was not very prolific, but it worked very well with us from an acquisition perspective, right? The other idea, again, with Deutsche Bank was, it was a great stress to acquire every single account because acquisition costs are very high. That's when we said, hey, let's focus on payroll accounts, for example, right? Suddenly you have 300, what are they? They're saving bank accounts. Correct. But you suddenly have 300 of them at one go. So you put the similar amount of effort. Yes. But you've got a whole bunch of effort. Yes, so then, so the strategic view was of, how to look at, where you get maximum bang for your buck for the effort in this case. So stuff like that. So, there are tons of this that, you learn on the job, and we could probably sit all day and go into various examples, right? I remember when I think this was with this consumer appliance company, right? And we decided it's called Stovecraft, and Pigeon Appliances was something that they were doing. I think the interesting part was they were already, again, large players. So fortunately for me, just as an aside, I've had the benefit of always working with a challenger brand, right? So you always had to, hustle a bit.
That's a great position to be in, yes.
Right? Always hustle a bit. There's big brother always above you, so you have to be smarter of it. So the big players were already spending tons of marketing dollar, and they were out there and all that stuff. So we had to be very intelligent. And that time, MasterChef, it had become a phenomenon in Australia, and therefore it had come to India, and we'd done the first one in India. Right? And that's when we did one very intelligent guerrilla tactic, right? So we said we will somehow get ourselves into become an appliance partner to them, right? And the appliances that we supplied to the show, we kind of tweaked it a little bit. We put the branding right up front, right? In the angle that one holds it, right? And then you realize that the kind of airtime and logo time you got, because everyone, the MasterChef, the contestants would hold the appliances in a certain way. In fact, at that year, I remember the title sponsor got really upset that, these guys are getting more mileage than anybody else, right? So there's stuff like this that, one could keep talking about. And, to date, we keep learning stuff like that.
Those are very, very interesting snippets. So coming to your next phase, right? So when someone is doing professionally great, and etc., at that point in time, thinking of entrepreneurship, right, there needs to be some trigger.
Right.
This is the reason why that thought, first of all, even entered my head, right? That why that thought ever entered in your head. That professionally you were doing very well,
right.
And so then why?
So, again, most people would probably give you a very profound response to this, right? Nothing profound, right? On this. And I must be honest.
Of course.
There was never a great instant trigger, was there a lingering thought for years? Of course there was, right? And one wouldn't take action. So I'll go back to a little bit of my old philosophy, right? That you think of an idea and then you learn it,
correct,
and then you want to expand on it.
Correct.
So even this, some people might say that, hey, if you've done something well, you keep doing more of it, right? In my case, I don't know whether you call it the need for expanding or taking it wide or whatever. There's this constant need to take it to the next level, right? And excuse me, even in this case, right? After 27 years, you've done. I mean, you're not a master, but you've done fair bit of the round across beyond your stream of work, etc. And the last 8-10 odd years, I was playing management roles, so I was definitely doing beyond just the marketing role. I was into sales. I was helping other facets of the organization, largely looking at the business per se, right? So the motivation, in the sense, the lingering thought was always there. And, I just felt that, we often give ourselves excuses that, I didn't do this because we didn't have the budgets. Oh, I didn't do that because maybe the entrepreneur or the MD who was leading didn't let you do it. So I said, enough of giving these excuses. Now, if you want to do something, the buck stops at you, and, you got to take it up in your own hands and do something that you're doing. There's nobody to blame. So whether the good comes out of it or whether it all goes down the tube, the buck stops at you, right? No need to say that, oh, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. And I said that, at some point of time, one had to take a call, and few minor things, could be triggers. But yeah, that's how I moved into that role. Having said that, it was a conscious decision. It was something that I was mulling over. You have friends and peers who often, and mentors, if you could call them, who would often say that you cut out for that kind of role and all that, and you would laugh it off. But I think at some point of time I decided that let's do it. The good part of being a part of the industry for the longest of time, and then moving to something like this. So money is not your singular motivation. Then the motivation is beyond just money, right? Because if it was just money, one had great jobs and cushy places where you could just continue. So I think there was a little urge for me to again go beyond the comfort zone that I was in, and hence this came about, right? Again, if you ask me, and I get this asked a lot, right? We all have this stereotype of an entrepreneur and founder because we read about it, right? We read all these celebrity stories and all that stuff. People who say, hey, I wake up in the morning and I'm only breathing my brand and I don't sleep all night. Nothing of the sort, right? I must be honest that I have a good night's sleep so that I'm fresh to do my work the next day. When I'm working, I'm working. When I switch off, I switch off. There's no obsessive behavior as one would typically associate with an entrepreneur and a founder. So to that extent, very different from a regular entrepreneur, I guess, and you must meet a lot, right?
Yes.
So, I take things as they come. I think this comes with the experience. I think that's something that I take away from my past experience, right? So you've seen a lot of how the businesses work. You've pretty much been a businessman in the last 10 odd years, where you're running businesses for somebody else, of course. But so you've seen all of it. So every response to everything is measured, right? And therefore I'm very unconventional, even as an entrepreneur. In fact, very often when I say I'm an entrepreneur, I kind of who am I talking about? And then oh, that's me, right? So yeah. You could say that it's still fairly new for me, so I guess it's planning to. It's still something that hasn't set in. In fact, for the first few months, I felt I was doing no different. I think I was doing the same kind of role. but then, when different kind of working situations and pressures come in,
then
right?
you
Then you
realize.
start realizing, and that's when you really, really empathize with a lot of the founders and
Yes.
promoters that you worked with, right? I may or may not agree with some of their responses, but I do completely agree of the core feelings that they
Yes.
had of
Yes.
how money is, and especially see. A lot of the entrepreneurs are funded, right? So not to say that they have it easy, but there's a bit of a cushion there. But when you're bootstrapped, again, the buck stops with you, right? So it's important for you to be very focused, etc. But I still continue to tell my team, and I tell myself that do not lose your ability to, have a vision, then learn and make it strong, and then move to the next phase, right? So to that extent, we've taken baby steps in our business, but we've already thought of our vision of where we want to be, etc.
Okay, so about your venture, right? We'd love to hear a lot about your venture. What is it that you're doing, and how did you even get into something like this? Because the kind of varied experiences that you have had, you could have literally done anything.
Right.
But there's something which drew you to doing what you are doing now.
Right.
And specifically would love to hear that there are always tough situations in an entrepreneur's life, right? We largely hear about the entrepreneur's success stories, right? We hardly hear about the challenges that he goes through. And many times these challenges, you can't surpass them, right? Sometimes you have to give in. And etc. I'm sure as an entrepreneur, you're no different, right? And you would have faced some. So we'd love to hear something like that as well.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to Leafbud. Leafbud is our labor of love. It is about artisanal ceramic tableware, serveware, brewware, which in common parlance is your mugs and your dinner sets, etc., etc. We do some bit of decor too. The way we differentiate, and fortunately, India as a country is very creative, right? And we have some fabulous players in this segment, right? It's largely unorganized, but we have some large, big organized players too. I think, the first thing that a lot of people ask me is, like you would ask for any product, right? Why buy you, right? And the first thing that we did, and this work started some time back along with my partner, where we were very keen to put out a differentiator which will not be exclusive, because now we're in this day and age where virtually nothing is not been done before in the past, or may not already been doing right now. So we're very clear about the fact that we will be artisanal. And what does artisanal, apart from being a fancy word, what does it mean? Is that we focused on doing products that are only handmade and handcrafted.
Okay.
Right, which means that any given point of time, if I'm offering you a mug, at best there will be 10, 12, 15 pieces of it. Beyond that, it is not physically possible to manufacture that. So by nature, that becomes a limited edition product. Right? We are very clear that the art comes first and then comes the business, right? And therefore we have this close bunch of artists that we work with. By nature, artists will be able to produce only a certain number, which they can replicate. And replicate is a wrong word, because even in a set of 6, there will be a marginal difference in each one, right? And they don't even like to do it as creative people, right? So, and we are very okay with that. So in fact, we've flipped that shortcoming into our advantage. And as a brand, we are very, very clear that we will continue to remain like this, right? The good part of it is that India has evolved. We have a very, very large audience who understand this art, who are okay with the fact that all my mugs are not going to look same. In fact, they look forward to it. I wouldn't call them connoisseurs, but they appreciate great art, right? For the first time, now that I'm in the business, I'm hearing customers talking about glazes, the kind of shades that will come into a mug, right? What will complement our home. Also the fact that why this category, etc. I had some bit of experience in this category, um, and also COVID, right? So COVID actually structurally changed the way we look at things and consumer behavior, right? One big thing came out of it is, apart from the lockdown where we were completely closed down and you needed to consume everything within the confines of your home, even after it opened up marginally and a little more after that, the whole concept of people entertaining at home started growing in a big way.
Correct.
Right? And it's not some rocket science, it's well documented, right? So therefore, people now started paying more attention to the kind of serveware that they're doing at home, right? From the fact that, and there was a clear shift from the fact that, hey, now this is only serveware, to, hey, this serveware should reflect my personality.
Correct.
Because I am serving it.
Correct.
And that's where we come in, right? And we said, let's get that niche, right? We are not, again, serveware is again all about socializing, right? People coming together and, meeting, whether it's, and the families. But we are not your typical Karan Johar family of 30, 40 people and all that stuff, right? Another niche that we've caught along is that we have downsized. We're making dinner sets for one person.
Oh,
why should a dinner set be for a 32 set piece, right? You're stuck. We have a lot of these upwardly mobile young executives working in various cities. They're living by themselves, right? And why can't she have a dinner set that's beautiful, which is just for a set of one? We are making tea sets for two, right? It's weird because these sets as a concept also is going through a lot of change. The elaborate parts are getting lost now. So we just have like a little kettle and two cup and saucer sets, just one couple, right? Why not? Why is this segment always ignored?
Correct.
So that's the other niche that we have, right? From Leafbud's perspective, we were very clear, we're artisanal. We've downsized. We're doing weird sizes. Nothing about us is symmetrical.
We're all weird.
We are all. In fact, we believe that every human being is unique, and that's the genesis of the word leafbud, right? A leafbud is like an iris, like a fingerprint. There are no two similar leaf buds, right? And that's why we exist, and we believe that no human being is exactly similar to anyone else. Everyone is slightly odd in their way, and we celebrate that oddity.
Excellent.
Right? For us, and I often use this line, when others are zigging, we are zagging. Right? So that's what we do. That's how we write our brand philosophy. That's how we do business. That's how we write every content line. Right? And that's where
so now tell us that I'm sure there must have been one big challenge which still remains in your head.
The challenge, in fact, because we are the way we are, right? And I'll give you an example of this Diwali, right? We had corporates coming to us and saying, hey, great, we love your stuff and all that stuff. Give me 300 mugs. And I had to say no. Right? Now, it's okay, you're being really lofty, you're living your brand and all. Now put your businessman's hat, right? And put the fact that you're putting your own money. You have to worry about your bank balance and your salaries and your rent, and you're refusing an order for 300. Very, very painful. Very difficult, I must tell you. So there have been difficult times in the short while that we've been around. We've had to refuse orders because that's not our nature, and we can't do scale of that kind, and we don't want to. Even when we could, we had to say no, because see, once you compromise on your brand philosophy, then you're out there, right?
So tell me, what is the little satisfaction that you get from this business? What is it that, like you mentioned sometime back, that it's not just the money, but it's something else, right? So what is that big satisfaction that you're getting?
So I must, and it may sound a bit vain, right? We don't make products for customers. We make great products, and we think that the customers who like it will come to us. We've slightly flipped the whole approach, right? And I think, at the end of the day, I make some great products, and it may not sell that time, but I'm still happy, right? Because we made a product that we love,
Mm.
right? And somewhere, someone out there is going to come and get it.
Understood.
We're very, very
Understood.
clear, right? So we're all making about a great product and all that, because see, we're too small to say that, hey, like a multinational, we will target the customer, we'll do exactly. And in our genre, it's not possible, right?
Sure.
We don't want to do customization.
Sure,
We don't want to
sure.
put your initials on the mug.
Correct.
That's not us,
Yeah,
right? So I think the joy of being able to make a creation that truly makes you happy is something that we're in it for. And like we said, right, the art comes first and then the business.
Correct. So I really like that whole concept that you are making products which make you happy, right? And that is what you are proud of,
Right.
and that is the passion which drives you, and etc. So, but thank you so much, Kewal. I mean, it was great learning with you, understanding once again that how passion overcomes anything else,
Yes.
right? And how, like you did mention, that it is not always the money part which drives. Of course, money is important. You would want to continue, to generate good money for yourself. But somewhere, if you're really talking about happiness, then there is a lot of passion which actually, if you're doing something with your passion, that gives you true happiness, and etc. Right?
And our brand is all about that. It reflects happiness.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kewal, once again.
Thank you so much. Great sitting with
And thank you, viewers. I mean, you would have seen that how Kewal actually had a great stint with great organizations, but ultimately decided to do something on his own. And again, the passion is about creating great products, not necessarily for the customers, but for his own happiness. And when you do it with passion, and you would always see that you will always find customers. So thank you very much for watching this episode. And thank you very much, Kewal, once again.
Thank you.